All right, good evening, everybody. I will call this regular meeting of the Tigard-Tualatin School Board to order at 6:31 p.m. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. Before we jump in, Dr. Riki Smith, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none, Chair.
All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Motion's been made by Director Jaimes. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Director Irvin. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, and with that, we will move into recognition and good news with our presenter, Lisa Burton, for Volunteer Appreciation Month. Lisa.
Make sure everything's on. Okay, good evening, everybody. And next week is April 17th through the 23rd is National Volunteer Week, but the month of April is actually National Volunteer Appreciation Month as well. So just to start out this evening, I wanted to share, I think last year we shared this as well, our volunteer hours logged through our help desk program. And 2019-20 school year, before COVID-19, we had 44,793 hours logged by all of our volunteers across the district. That went down substantially, obviously, because we didn't have people in the buildings, and just shows you how many people are in our buildings helping us, helping our staff, helping our teachers throughout the school year. And so fortunately it is going up though, even though it came very late for volunteers to be able to be in buildings. They continued to sign up through the help desk. And the number at this time right now is 5,385. And our hope is that it'll just continue to go up. People sign up through the help desk so that we can log their hours. And we're just really grateful for all of our community members that continue to sign up and continue to ask to be in buildings, even though it's been hard that they haven't been able to participate, especially in things like field trips with their children. We continue to hear, but we're very grateful that they continue to sign up. I want to highlight this evening, our groups were notified that they were being recognized this evening and were asked to join us virtually, or were also invited to attend if they wanted to. But I want to mention a few groups who are thousands of volunteers within these groups who share their hearts and time with us throughout the school year. Ttsd parent support and booster groups have continued to fundraise and organize virtual events this school year. They provide much needed funds for school activities and equipment, and often provide food and motivational treats to show staff how much they are appreciated. Although parents have not been able to be in schools, they have found creative ways to care for their school communities. And we cannot do the work we do without their support and encouragement. I also just want to recognize, Kelly Cameron, who is here tonight from the Byram PSO, who has joined us this evening. And a shout out to Kelly. So one of the Foundation for Tigard-Tualatin Schools, in partnership with school board members, staff, and the community, have built an amazing resource for TTSD for all of our families. In April 2 years ago, they scrambled to fill a great need and have continued to move mountains. To highlight a few things in the program this evening, that are part of the program is that they're currently serving 600 plus families. They started out with 800 plus families and are still continue to serve at least 600 families weekly. They've made over 55,000 boxes of food, fed over 110,000 people. There are 25,000 volunteer hours logged for Pack with Pride, and 3,500 volunteers from our community and staff. $520,000 plus have been fundraised through Pack with Pride or for Pack with Pride, and 2 million pounds of food donated by individuals, businesses, grocery stores, farms, food manufacturers and distributors, clubs and schools. So they are just a power, connecting with the community all around us, and provide just an amazing service to our families, to TTSD families. So we want to thank them this evening once again for all of their work. And I believe there is a flyer going out that will highlight even more of their work for people to look for in their mail, their email, that will highlight more facts and information about Pack with Pride very soon. And then although elected, I wanted to also acknowledge tonight our school board members for your volunteer commitment and your hours that you also log serving on committees, and then of course your time that you give every 2 weeks to this meeting, along with supporting individual schools. Many of our TTSD parents, staff, and community members also serve on committees along with our board members all year long. So we just want to acknowledge that there are people across our district that are supporting the work that's happening, from budget to equity work, and right now our strategic planning work that's happening. They give their experience, expertise, and time to help guide important decision-making across the district. One too many. So I wanted to highlight some of the schools shared some information, specific staff or specific community members' names that they wanted to highlight. So I'd like to just highlight them this evening and read a little bit of information that they have shared about these community members and groups. Bridgeport Elementary PTO have continued to remain active despite the challenges these last 2 years. Kylie McLaughlin, Maria Blackmer, Megan Curtis, Maggie O'Brien, Wendy Nicholskew, Renee Sanchez, Rachel McQueen, Rachel Tate Wong, Beth Bittman, and Leah Feidner from Bridgeport Elementary. From CFT Elementary, a few CF Tigard Elementary principal honors a large group of volunteers: Jean Burton, Megan Locust, Jimmy Brown, Taylor Brown, Andrea Bell, Kirsten Rugg, Amy Perrin, Gilberto Salas, Amalia Moore, Ruthie and Elber Hine, Aisha Miranda, Cherise Goddard, Jenny Huerta, Kirsten Foster, Emily Ripper, Katie Reinert, Mary Walters, and Nick Bonacci. Who have supported the Pact with Pride program, delivering food boxes to families this year. Principal Velasquez shared that the community has continued to help whenever they have needed it. And just so you know, many of our schools have staff members and community members that specifically deliver food for their community members within their buildings, which is pretty cool. They see a familiar face every week. I hear a lot of stories about how fun that is and how nice that is to see someone familiar. Durham Elementary principal recognizes the dedication of their PSO president, Antoinette Olivas, bringing the community together through a variety of projects and culturally responsive and meaningful activities. Metzger recognizes Jessica Rail for leading the way on revising the Metzger Art Literacy Program, inspiring others with her equity focus and her desire to bring art to all Metzger students. Hazelbrook Middle School recognizes the work of PSO members Leah Feindner, Haley Frink, and Renee Schaefer for fulfilling the needs in the Hazelbrook community in a time where it has been difficult to come together. And Tualatin Elementary recognizes Ashley Young and Kristen Faircloth, who have shared a large piece of their hearts with the Tualatin Elementary School family. And school board members and community, I'm reading excerpts from these quotes from principals. Please, if you have a moment to take time to read the rest of it. Mary Woodward teachers are honored this evening. Claire Juarez, Diane Bonica, Shauna Romanelli, Bob and Kumiko Mahan, Stacy Beckman, and Mark Johnson have stepped up to lead art literacy in classrooms, helped prep during CDL when students were doing distance learning. They've supported staff and continue to recruit volunteers. I think I can speak for our principals and staff across the district who are so grateful for the community members, parents, and fellow staff who go above and beyond to give their time and care to help and encourage. So I just want to give a big thank you to all TTSD volunteers, which also include a lot of our staff who volunteer on the weekends, and especially with Pack with Pride, and we just want to celebrate you this evening.
Board members, any comments you'd like to make?
I just wanted to note that I'm seeing at least one name up there that's a retired teacher who's clearly coming back and volunteering in our district. And I think that's also pretty special. But yeah, our volunteers have always been one of our strongest components of our district. And this pandemic has certainly shown with the amount of hours that we now have dedicated to Pack with Pride and the generosity of our food providers, as well as our parents and community members. It's heartening to see. It's really been a bright spot in this pandemic.
Yeah, a lot of our staff who volunteered right when the pandemic started or have come back. It's amazing. Yeah, a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people.
Director Evans? Oh, Director Hemmings.
Yeah, I just want to say, echo what the director here said, that, we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. And so it shows a lot that they're willing to wait so long to, have the virus clear and everything. And then they're still wanting to come back and help us out. So I really appreciate that. I want to give them a very big thanks from the bottom of my heart, because I know that as a former teacher, without parents in my classroom or volunteers, I wouldn't have been able to be as successful as I was. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is when you think about this, the scope of activities that our volunteers do, from teaching students how to read to using their expertise on the bond oversight committee to help us, monitor those investments. It's a really broad range of opportunities. So we are so grateful for our volunteers and encourage other folks to get involved in that way. Yeah, Vice Chair Lynn.
Just want to echo what everybody else has said. As a parent, as a member of this community, I'm very grateful to volunteers for all the work that they do. I know that they really make the world go round, so to speak. So thank you.
Director.
Yeah, so in addition to all of that, I would also say that, at all of our schools, there are countless people, not just doing sort of the events and sort of those things that you see, but helping reshelving library books and recovering the library books and out on the fields helping. And they might cover, lunchroom stuff, doing just copying and laminating in the staff room there. So there's just, so many people that are absolutely crucial to kind of keeping things running smoothly, getting things to our teachers when they need it, all of that. So it's really special to have so many parents so dedicated to our schools.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, we will then move to action item part 1, resolution 2122-17, Arab American Heritage Month, with presenter Director Tracy Rose. Do you have any volunteers?
Thank you.
Oh, could you say that one more time for the listeners?
Within your board packet, you have a resolution honoring Arab American Heritage Month, and I ask a volunteer from one of the directors to please read it into the record.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Of course. Give me great joy here. Tigard-Tualatin Schools District 23J Resolution number 2122-17. A resolution of the Tigard-Tualatin School Board of Directors proclaiming April 2022 Arab American Heritage Month. Whereas for over a century, Arab Americans have been making valuable contributions to virtually every aspect of American society in medicine, law, business, technology, civic engagement, government, military service, and culture. And whereas Victor George Atia, Oregon's 32nd governor from 1979 to 1987, was the first Arab American governor in United States history. And whereas since migrating to the United States, people of Arab descent have shared their rich culture and traditions with neighbors and friends, while setting examples of model citizens and public servants. And whereas Arab Americans have brought with them their resilient family values, strong work ethic, dedication to education and diversity in faith and creed that has added strength to our democracy. And whereas Arab Americans have enriched our society by sharing in the entrepreneurial American spirit that makes our nation free and prosperous. And whereas Arab Americans in the United States continue to be neglected or defaced by misconceptions, bigotry, and anti-Arab hate in the forms of crimes and speech. And whereas Arab Americans issues such as civil rights abuses, harmful stereotyping, and bullying must be combated in the forms of education and awareness. And whereas Arab Americans have added to the strength and diversity of our Tigard-Tualatin community and beyond. And whereas Tigard-Tualatin students have protections in board policy and affinity spaces that welcome and encourage their contributions. And whereas Arab Americans join all community members in the desire to see a peaceful and inclusive society where every individual has equitable opportunities and feels safe. And whereas April is celebrated as National Arab History Heritage Month. Therefore, let it be resolved that the Tigard-Tualatin School Board hereby proclaims April 2022 National Arab American Heritage Month and encourage all students, all staff, students, and community members to join in this observance.
All right, board members, any discussion? Comments? Well, I will just say I love seeing Governor Atia's name in this. I got to know him a little bit right before he passed away. He was actually a member of the same fraternity that I was a member of, and literally right until he passed, stayed involved. And he was a trailblazer in Oregon and nationally, and proud of his Arab American history too. So very cool to see his name.
I'm going to refrain from making comments because I understand we've got a student making comment today, and I think that it would be more appropriate to hear students
I
coming.
can't, I'm struggling to make it out. Can you pull the mic a little closer?
I say I'm pleased that we're doing this resolution, but I want to withhold further comment, save space for the public comment that I know is coming from a student for whom this resolution has particular meaning.
Okay. Well, and with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board of Directors adopt Resolution 2122-17 proclaiming April 2022 Arab American Heritage Month as presented.
I second.
Motion has been made by Director Jaimes and seconded by Director Zerschmidt. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Director Rose. And we will move then into item 7, student representative reports. Who's first? Representative Taylor Golby.
Yeah, I'm shocked. So to start off my report, I just wanted to open up with something that's I thought was impressive. So we have a team at Tigard called Team for Cali, and they're led by 2 THS juniors who raised over a 7-week period, raised over $11,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And in total, the Portland metro area raised $178,000. And so I thought that was super impressive. They also tie into our Race to Raise event at Tigard, which is an event where we have different teams of students that all race to raise the most amount of money for their charities that they choose. And that's also coming up. So in that little part, we have all the events are going to start happening this week and next week for Race to Raise. So I would encourage going to those. There was also a voter registration drive today, which is pretty cool. I didn't get to go. I was doing some other things at the time, but I heard that it went well. We also had Tigard's theater program just qualified for nationals, and our choir qualified for state, which is really cool. And this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Powder Puff takes place, so I would all recommend going to that. That's a pretty cool event. Seniors will win because they're the best, but and then finally, kind of to tie it all together, there was a lot of talk at Tigard, so it's hard for me to I can't glaze over this, but there was talk at Tigard of a student walkout that happened. They got shut down by admin. And so there was some miscommunication, I think, about around that problem. And so I don't really know a lot besides from what I've heard from students. I haven't gotten a lot of communication from admin about it so far. I am planning to talk to Bailey about it. But as far as I know, there was a lot of miscommunication that was happening that led to that event. So.
The 12th side. Well, I just want to open by saying Happy Unity Month. Closer. Can you hear me now? Oh, no? Okay. Well, I just wanted to open by saying Happy Unity Month. And this month at Tualatin, in honor of Unity Month, students have enjoyed various presentations and performances from affinity groups. And I would especially like to highlight one particular performance that happened at lunch last week that was put on by our Pacific Islander students. And it was a series of dances, and it was a really good time, and everyone got involved, and it was really fun. Additionally, our Voices Assembly is set for April 13th. And I know that for me personally, my freshman year, that assembly, I cried at it. And it was the first time I really felt like I was part of the Tualatin community. And I'm really excited that that tradition's getting resumed again, even though it took a little 3-year hiatus. And so far this month, I've found that for me personally, my classes have held a special focus on unity and our collective strength despite our differences, which I have found very timely and refreshing. This is the last week of Q3, and despite the typical sense of burnout and exhaustion, particularly from the seniors, there's definitely a feeling of relief as the finish line is right around the corner. Our HOSA club is sending 12 kids to internationals, and you can help support their trip to Nashville by purchasing first aid kits through the Tualatin web store.
And on the sports side of things, our spring sports are underway with games, meets, and matches this week. Girls lacrosse and softball have home games tonight. Baseball has games on Tuesday and Friday, and track has its senior night this Wednesday with field events starting at 4:30 and track events starting at 5. I'm racing the 1500 at 5:15. You should definitely come support. It's always fun. And lastly, I would like to mention that the TTSU is resuming our Student Voice Summit following the pandemic. And that is happening on April 15th on the Learning Stairs at Tigard. And the union has even arranged for transportation in order to make this event more accessible, which I think is really cool. And I'm excited that it's happening again. That's all.
Very cool. Thank you both. And with that, we'll move to Superintendent and Board Communication, Dr. Ricky Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start out this evening by saying, sharing my gratitude for the opportunity to learn with the board at the recent National School Boards Association National Conference, and having the opportunity to present with you, Chair, twice during the conference. And I also want to say congratulations to Tigard student leadership who led the voter registration effort this afternoon, and inviting a broad array of local and state representatives in our own school board, Director Bowman and Director Zershmead. People think that civics are dead. They need to come and see our students in action. It was a wonderful event, and kudos to the team that established and put that on this evening. So in light of that, there are a number of other opportunities for the board relative to student work this week and into next. Tomorrow, April 12th, is STEM for You, which was formerly Women in STEM, will be held at the Tigard High School gym from 4:15 to 6:15. It is an initiative that is supported by the Tigard and Tualatin Chambers of Commerce, the City of Tualatin's STEM initiative, and then our own district's #WorkReady CTE work. And to Mahathi's point, TTSD Student Summit will be this Friday on April 15th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Tigard. This includes student-led and student-centered conversations around the pressing issues for our youth today. The 4 core topics will be mental health, interpersonal violence, including sexual harassment and assault, equity, and student safety, so not to be missed. And as a result of TTSD's continued implementation of inclusive academic pathways, I have been invited to participate in a Tri-County Regional Superintendent collaboration that is currently sponsored by Westland Wilsonville Superintendent Dr. Kathy Ludwig, advancing the implementation of inclusive academic strategies that support historically underserved student populations in accessing rigorous AP, IB instruction and tag identification on Monday, April 18th. And finally, on Friday, April 22nd, Earth Day, our own TTSU's Climate Change Committee students who will present their resolution for a second read this evening. We'll be meeting with Congresswoman Bonamici at Tualatin High School at 2 p.m. and then have the opportunity to present a joint town hall with Oregon State Representative Daisha Graber at her town hall that evening at Cook Park from 5:30 to 6:30 at Pavilion number 4. So nothing but great opportunities to see our students in action and to hear their voice and things that they care about. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for many, if not all of those opportunities. Thank you.
All right, board members, any questions or board reports? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Please.
All right. I feel like what haven't we been doing since we last met? I was thrilled and quite honored to be a part of that school board conference that we all attended. And to Dr. Sue's point, the presentation, there were a lot of wonderful things there. What's interesting is when the people that you know and the programs that you already know are doing really well, such as the presentation that you guys both did on student policy in our district, I walked away from that feeling most inspired. And it was things that I already knew sort of were going on. And yet that was still really like, what's next was how I left that presentation. So really well done. Let's see, Vice Chair Lynn and I continue to do our work with the strategic plan and the community action committee We're meeting again Wednesday, and then that kind of moves to the next sort of phase of that work, and that's been really wonderful. Last night, I attended a Zoom seminar called Race in Oregon that had 4 panelists, including our own Jimmy Brown, and a former school board member, Manny Trujillo, Rose Highbear, and Valerie Sasaki, that all sort of gave their perspectives and their stories on race in Oregon, which was really wonderful. And just to kind of hear what they see as some potential solutions, as well as sort of those continuing issues I think we're all kind of trying to work towards. And then the Health Curriculum Adoption Committee continues to meet, and we will do so next week to kind of narrow down that process and the curriculums that we're looking at in order to get one step closer to that. And I think that's it.
Vice Chair Lynn?
Thank you. Just to build off of what Director Urban was talking about with respect to the strategic plan work, that work, yes, is ongoing. And I just would say in addition that we would invite community members and parents and others to continue coming. You know, what can happen with this kind of effort is that we get a large group of people at first, and then it kind of tapers off. And so I'm just encouraging you to keep coming. We have future conversations planned where your input is desperately needed. And so I'd like to also say kudos to Ben and Sue and others who did such a good job, I think, at the National School Boards Association conference. It was my first time presenting at that, or I'm sorry, attending that. I didn't present. And I was overwhelmed with a lot of good information about best practices. And one of those things was really around how school districts focus their attention on student success, right? And I learned about this notion of developing a portrait of a graduate and what that really ought to look like, and thinking about that in relationship to developing perhaps a portrait of an educator, right? And having a set of expectations and standards around that. And so it's something that I think, Director Urban, we might consider as we think about strategic planning as we go forward. The last thing I'll say is that, you know, my family came to Oregon 5 years ago to Portland State. I have had this decade-long career as an academic administrator, and when my contract ended at Portland State, I chose to step down and to take a sabbatical. And in that time, I've had the opportunity to consider a lot of possibilities in terms of directions for my future, and made the decision based on a lot of information, as well as just great conversations and with folks there, to take a deanship at the University of Colorado, Denver, which would be effective this summer. And so slight change in plans, but as I entered into that conversation with that institution, I made it very clear that I have a rising senior here at the Tigard-Tualatin School District. I also have a rising senior at the University of Oregon, and that it would be very important for them to continue on with their education. And so the family will not be moving. And so Nase will continue to be at Tualatin High School next year. And as such, I will continue to be, I'll have residency in the state of Oregon and plan to continue my board service, at least to see Nase through high school. So, you know, bittersweet news for all of us, because I really have come to love Oregon, and I've certainly loved working with this group. But, you know, after some reflection, decided that academic administration is really where I live professionally, and saw a wonderful opportunity to do that, unfortunately in another state. But so I will continue to serve on the board until my son graduates. But I wanted to sort of make that official because I know that there's been some conversation about that. Okay, thanks.
Well, I think I speak for the board and the district when we say congratulations. And bittersweet does feel like the right word. But we're glad that we'll have you at least for the near future. Director Hymace or Director Zerschmied?
So I echo what Director Irvin said about it's a busy season right now. There was the NSBA conference, of course, and the high point of it was, of course, our own TTSD session. And I'm not just saying that, but I actually heard more positive comments from people in the room after that session than any other session I sat in. But there was another really good session I wanted to mention, which was on education and free speech cases that are likely to come forward before the Supreme Court this term. And there was some really good information. So if my fellow board members want to, I didn't see any of you in that room. So if any of you want to pick my brain on that one, I'd be happy to. There was also the OSBA Bonds, Ballots and Buildings Conference. It's like, after 2 years of no conferences, this was the week of every single conference in the world. And so that conference dealing with the question of presuming that our long-term facilities group committee does come back with a recommendation that we go out for another bond in a couple of years, what is the planning process look like for that? And we got some really good information on that. I also, along with Chair Bowman, had the opportunity to take part in a pre-town hall meeting with locally elected officials with Senator Merkley. And during that meet and greet, I said to him, I thanked him and reminded him of the continued work we need him to do to get the waiver for the National Free School Lunch Program and how important that is. And he agreed and is still right on board with that. So that's important work that needs to be done at the federal level. And then very locally last week, I had my last sit with a board member at Tualatin High School for the year. And it was, once again, some great conversations with students at Tualatin High School. I'm kind of bummed it was the last one of the year, but I figure no student's going to want to meet with a board member when it's finals or ACT looming large. So, but it's a program that I hope to continue doing next year with students at hopefully both high schools, but we'll see if I can do that. So,
Director Hymace.
Okay, so I also echo the sentiment of how we've been busy, but I think in education, these are our busy months. So I went to the second meeting for the Community Advisory Committee where Director Irvin and Director Lynn are chairing that committee. And I love hearing all the voices, especially the voice of a certain student who was there. And I think we all pretty much gave him a standing ovation after what he said and how highly he spoke of some of our teachers at Hazelbrook. And so it's like, very, very proud of how he spoke as well as of that teacher, because I knew her from working at Bridgeport with her. And then also went to the NSBA conference, and my biggest takeaway from that conference, aside from all of the learning and all of the great sessions, was the fact that I think here at TTSD, we are miles ahead of where other states are in terms of their equity work and other districts. And, I say that with a humble heart, but also kind of full of pride as well. That we're doing such great work, and it hasn't come easy, but we're continuing to do the work, and we're under the great leadership right now. And so I think that that just speaks volumes of Dr. Sue and the cabinet, that we're doing such great work. But before going to the conference, I did get the chance to attend the Colleagues of Color listening session for the strategic plan, and that also led to a very fruitful conversation, as well as just knowing how what they need, right? And so what they're asking for, what they need, and how better we can serve our staff of color here at TTSD. Aside from that, I also attended the Building Equity Coordinators listening session, the Latino parent session, and then rounded it off with a virtual Colleagues of Color listening session, as well as the Financial Steering Committee meeting, so that we could plan for what comes after the Community Advisory Committee. And then tomorrow we're meeting with Director Un and Director Lynn to plan our next each committee. So look for that invitation in an email somewhere.
Well, most of the meetings I attended have been mentioned. So what I will use with my time is I wanted to read into the record a joint letter that Vice Chair Lynn, Superintendent Ricky Smith, and I submitted to the Oregon Transportation Commission. This is an important community issue, and I think something that everyone should be aware of, particularly in the coming months. We write to you as the leaders of the Tigard-Tualatin School District to express deep concern about the state of disrepair of state-owned Hall Boulevard in Tigard and the critical need to use IIJA dollars, that's the federal infrastructure bill, to make desperately needed improvements. Several key urban arterials, including Hall Boulevard and Pacific Highway, run through our school district and do not meet the needs of the community after years of disinvestment. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to address this challenge. Hall Boulevard is of particular concern because it is a critical route to school for thousands of TTSD students, including those who attend Metzger, Durham, Templeton, Tualatin, Creekside, and Tigard High School. Students from across Tigard walk, bike, skate, scoot, and drive to school along and across Hall Boulevard. We believe that all students deserve access to a safe route to school. After a recent pedestrian death and injury on Hall Boulevard, it is not an exaggeration to say our students are not always safe getting to school on Hall Boulevard. There are numerous challenges with the current state of Hall: inadequate pedestrian crossings, insufficient lighting, sidewalk gaps, poor signage, terrible road surface conditions, inadequate bicycle facilities, and other missing safety elements. These conditions create an urgent need for state investment. This road is no longer meets the needs of our community, and because this is a state-owned road, we need your help to fix the problem. As the elected leaders and superintendent of the Tigard-Tualatin School District, serving nearly 12,000 families, we implore you to direct ODOT to maximize investment into addressing the critical, time-sensitive needs of Hall Boulevard. Our students and community members are depending on these investments. The reason why I wanted to flag this is because the Transportation Commission has essentially chosen the framework that they're going to move forward with. And there will be, the city of Tigard reached out to us to basically say there's going to be opportunities for the community to weigh in on this. And we really need to come together as a community to make sure that those federal dollars bring Hall Boulevard up to speed. If you drive along Hall, particularly when you get into Metzger, it is not a safe place for elementary school kids to be walking to school. So I think this is a really important issue that I hope we all can work together on in the coming months. Okay, any final thoughts before we move on? Then with that, we will close the superintendent board communication and we'll move to public comment. So I will read the overview of public comment rules, and then I will invite our public commenters forward one at a time. The Tigard-Tualatin School Board meetings are public meetings, meaning that the business of the board is conducted in an open meeting for the public to observe as required by law. However, regular public comment at board meetings is a policy choice of the school board and not a legal requirement. As the board values input from our students, parents, and community members that we serve, the board provides these opportunities for community members to provide input on important topics. In addition to public comment at board meetings, community members may submit written comments to the board secretary at each meeting or email comments directly to the board. The email addresses of the school board can be found on the district website. This section of public comment is for items directly related to the board meeting agenda. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes each and should be brief and concise. Director Zerschmied, I'm guessing, is ready to help us out with cue cards for when you've reached certain times within your 3 minutes. Speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations or programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning specific district personnel. We are also unable to hear praise or commendations about district personnel, but invite you to submit commendations to the superintendent. We only have a couple signed up, so this won't be relevant. While you're speaking, you'll want to make sure that the green light at the bottom of the microphone is on. You can press the button at the front to turn it on. At the beginning of your comments, please share your zip code. If you would like your comment to be included in the meeting minutes, your comments to be included in the meeting minutes, please provide a written copy to our board secretary, Patty Roberts, at the end of the table. Please note that this is an opportunity for the board to listen to the community. We as a board do not engage in dialogue, but instead we are here to listen during this portion, and additional comments can be submitted to the board via email. Okay, with that, I believe we only have one public commenter in the room. Tasneem, is that how you pronounce it? Tasneem, great. Please come forward. And first, thank you so much for being here. Do we just see you at the previous?
Yeah.
I thought we did. So you've been busy tonight like us. So you'll have 3 minutes. Feel free to get settled. Make sure that green light is on.
I move this.
Start with your zip code. Yeah, you move the whole thing.
Okay.
And then whenever you're ready, you can start, and Director Zershmi will begin timing.
Okay, thank you so much. So my zip code is 97224. My name is Tasneem Jabra, and I'm the president and founder of the Middle Eastern North African Union at Tigard High School. I'd like to really express my appreciation for the resolution, because as an Arab Muslim woman, it's often hard to feel seen or recognized. My experience has been that I felt like I needed to change the way that I dressed to look more acceptable. I felt like I needed to change the way that I spoke. I used to have like an accent, and like I would like watch Friends and like try to like fix it. And so I felt like I needed to change to be like a part of society. And so with that, I'd also like to say like there was like a moment where like I didn't feel safe like wearing like the abaya. And so what I'm wearing right now is the abaya. And I felt like that would make me like a target, like wearing the abaya. And like obviously along with being like an Arab, I'm also like Muslim. And so like I have two big identities. And so I never know when I'm going to be like a target. And so, but now I'm wearing the abaya. And the reason that I feel safe to wear the abaya is because of the adults who really just like made me feel a part of the change. So before, like maybe like a month ago, I wasn't wearing this. I didn't dress the way that I wanted to dress. This is how I wanted to dress. But like when I started like communicating with adults, with like administration, they've been a huge help at Tigard High School. When they made us feel like the youth, my club, we have an advisor, and we sorry, I'm like trying to think of the words. So basically what I'm saying is once we felt like a part of like the conversation, and once we felt like heard and listened to, I think it's easy to feel like not like optimistic with like our world. And I just really want to express just how important it is to have like students a part of that conversation, because I know like before speaking to like Ben and like Sue, I didn't think like it was possible to like talk to, like actually like, go up to them. Like I thought like I had to like email them or something. I don't know. But I think that it's really important to really show to the youth that like we can talk to you guys, we can go up to you. Like I'm glad that I felt like comfortable talking to you today. But really the message that I really want to bring right now is once we start making the youth feel like oh stop, sorry, oh I didn't look at my time. Okay, wait,
That is your
do I
time.
leave now?
Yeah, well, I will just use chair's discretion here to say thank you for coming forward. Your courage and your eloquence is very much appreciated. So thank you. And you've got our email. So speaking of emailing us, if you have additional comments written down, please do feel free to share them with Patty, and she'll make sure that the board sees them.
Thank you.
But thank you very much. With that, our second public commenter is Janet Bailey. Is Janet here? Okay. Well, with that, We will close the public comment section and we will move on to reports and discussion. So the first item is a Narcan update with presenter Director Carol Kinch. Director Kinch.
There you go.
Good evening. Good
That's too
evening.
close. Yeah.
Hi, hello. It's a pleasure to be here. I actually am going to defer my time to the experts. This is Trey Parker. He's one of our district nurses, and Kathy Wilson-Fay, our mental health and wellness coordinator. And we have a special guest. One of our SROs is also going to join us. So as they get started, I'm going to go grab 2 more chairs and we'll be right back. But Kathy is going to start.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening to talk about this important issue. It's a grim issue. It's a grim picture that we have in Oregon. As a state, we're second in the nation behind Montana only in terms of the percentages of people with a substance use disorder. And we are ranked last in Oregon as far as access to substance abuse treatment. Substance-related overdose deaths have been rising at an alarming rate in Oregon. Estimates are that overdose deaths have increased by 70% since 2017. And that's true for, we also are seeing an alarming increase in Washington County as well. Washington County and the metro area are specifically seeing a large increase in fentanyl overdoses. In 2021, the high rates of fentanyl-related fatalities continued, and 93% of all opioid-related deaths were caused by fentanyl in counterfeit pills. As you probably heard, fentanyl is incredibly powerful. It only takes a very small amount to kill, and the risk for our youth is really high. We've been recently affected by the deaths of 2 teens in Portland who died. They were both from the same school and died within 24 hours of each other in a fentanyl-related deaths. Just heartbreaking. Most of these young people think they're buying opioids or other common prescription medications, but the pills they receive are counterfeit. It's cheaper for manufacturers to put fentanyl in pills when they are in the manufacturing process. The danger comes from the reality that there's no way to tell if you're taking a pill that's a legitimate opioid or not. Our young people have a natural curiosity to experiment with substances because taking risks is a normal part of adolescent development. So it's important that we get the information out to families, to students, to schools, and inform everyone about the tragic potential for overdose deaths with fentanyl.
Thank you. Okay. So my name is Trey Parker. I'm one of your district RNs. We have been discussing how we're going to proceed with this because it is clearly not something we can any longer say is not going to affect the community. It already has. As Kathy was mentioning, opioids these days are particularly potent. The 2 young people who passed away in the Portland public schools within 24 hours of each other, that was a dosage that is, compared to historically what drugs were available, is way, way, way more potent. What opioids do when someone ingests it, particularly the synthetic opioids, the danger is that it will depress the respiratory function of the body, to a lesser degree the heart rate, but almost always it is a breathing issue. It shuts that down. What Narcan does is it quickly reverses the result of that. We have been working in the district to get a set of kits for each of our middle schools and our high schools. We're going to be identifying people within those particular buildings, at least 5 if we can, who have current CPR training, And we will be doing a training based on an OHA training module so that we will be able to respond if we have someone, staff or student, who in fact appears to be suffering from an opioid overdose. One of the things I do want to emphasize is Narcan is not a silver bullet for all overdoses. It will only deal with an opioid overdose. We are not going to try to ask people when we train them to try to determine what it is this person may be suffering from. We're just going to work under the good faith assumption that they will proceed with that Narcan administration as it appears to be warranted. So anyway, we'd like to identify at least 5 people for each building within the offices, the health room aides that the district is using, and of course our district nurses, so that we will have at least a set of people for each of our secondary schools who can quickly respond to that. We really hope to God we never have to do this, but we just cannot make that assumption any longer. And Carol, did you want to add anything? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to add too, just a piece about the prevention efforts that we are undertaking here in the district. Luckily, we don't have to do it alone. We have a great system in Washington County. We have the collaborative that meets against substance use and talks about all sorts of resources. It's important to get education and information out, just education and information over and over and over again. So we're exploring different ways to do that. Education out to administrators and counselors, family partnership advocates, trying to get that information into everyone's hands, including students and families. Our big message is talk to your youth, talk to them, spread the word about these dangers. Overdose deaths usually are, not usually, but they do include young people who have not regularly used drugs. And that's the word that we want to get out to assume every pill not given by a pharmacy is suspect and could be fatal. I've included basic information to schools like brief lessons for adolescents on the dangers of overdose and excuse me, and community resources, of course, information for families on the website, our school website. I've had meetings with Tigard Turns the Tide and Tualatin together, who are doing great work on this. They're actually having a webinar tomorrow on e-cigarettes and vaping, which I know is a different category of concern, but it's still that adolescent experimentation with substances. So those are the things I wanted to share. Thanks.
And I just want to quickly introduce Officer Mary, who's joining us today. He's not necessarily going to present, but we know you might have questions for him as well. So questions or comments?
I think we probably will have a few. We'll start with Director Jaimes. We'll go to Director Zerschmidt and then move around.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation and thank you for bringing awareness to this issue. Now, it said on here that it's Narcan is safe and easy to administer and that we obtain kits. So how do we, or how are you planning on training? Is there is it you just take a pill or?
Yeah, so the way Narcan can be given one of 2 ways, as an injection and as a nasal spray. It's dead easy to give. What we will be doing within the district is when we have those people identified that we want to train for each school, we will be doing it in person. We have little trainers so that people will get a hands-on use of it. And like I said, it is very easy to use. We have already got a set of donations from Emergent Biosystems present in the district. We're going to be setting up kits. And mainly what we will be talking about in addition to the simple administration is what to look for in terms of the things that you may see. And it almost always, again, is trouble with the depressed breathing response. People, if they're breathing at all, if they're in overdose, may be doing something kind of like a sleep apnea type of snorting, gasping. That's a result, direct result of the opioid overdose. So Narcan, it comes in there are two sets per kit. And the reason for that is sometimes you may have to give more than one dose. That's one of the things we're going to be emphasizing in training, is that when we give it, it's an automatic 911 call. We want EMS there really quickly, because once an opioid is in someone's system, it can stay in there up to 12 hours. When people are have overdosed and go into the hospital, they generally put them on a Narcan drip, at least for the first 14 hours, to make sure any circulating drug will not be able to rebind to their nervous system.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that answers my question for that. In terms of, would this be administered then through like a nurse, or because a lot of our medicines we have a procedure, right?
Right.
To administer by.
So
by our-
anyone in Oregon, in fact, can give Narcan under the current laws, Good Samaritan laws, and naloxone access laws, as long any good faith effort to counteract a suspected opioid overdose is covered. However, again, we are particularly trying to identify staff members who have CPR certification. And again, we will be really emphasizing what to look for. But the giving of the medication itself is extremely easy. It really is like giving Afrin, you're squirting it into the nostrils. So
Perfect. And then for our resource officer, what, since it's really not easy to detect, I guess, from what we have here, what else can we do? Like, I mean, is there, as a parent, is there like a testing kit that we could get for kids, or I don't know.
No, the big thing, just we already talked about it. Educating your kids, talking to them about it, let them know what's going on. Kids are very curious about things, and just giving the education piece about what it is and what it can do to the body is very important. You'll see signs, drug addiction. I mean, they're very common sign stuff, but with this specifically, it's just educating is the most important thing.
At the board meeting, the National Board Meeting Association or board, whatever, conference that we went to, this lady had a sugar packet, and she was saying that much could kill like thousands of people. So, how does that transfer to, like an opioid pill? Like, do they just put like 1 grain and then that's enough, or like how?
Yeah, they'll mix it, like we talked about that as well, mixing it with pills. They'll mix it in with them when they're pressing the pills in their illegal manufacturing of it, and they'll add it to it, and all it takes is somebody to get they're trying to get somebody a little bit high, and they put just a tiny bit too much in, and it can kill somebody. It's very lethal. So it's very dangerous.
This is Director Kinch. Are we planning on doing any kind of education, webinars, whatever, meetings for our community?
So that is what Kathy was alluding to. So there's two things. One of the things that I will highlight that was, as I was doing a little bit of research on this, is it's not just drug addiction. It can take one child going to a party, somebody handing them a pill saying, try this, and they think it's one thing and it has fentanyl in it. And I think, gives me goosebumps as a mother to think about that. So I think education is extremely important. And Kathy is working with Washington County. They're doing a campaign to get the information out to families and communities and students. So you're going to hear more and more about this, obviously, as the prevalence of overdose is going up in our community. And then we'll embed drug and alcohol prevention into it's always part of our health classes and other things that we do at school.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, about our marginalized communities.
Mhm.
Usually drug, affects people who are often, pushed to the fringes, right? And so if we can do some type of education, then we should be doing it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for already thinking about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Director Zerschmied?
So I echo, I'm really excited to see this. I just would be remiss if I didn't ask, if a person at the school believes that a student is having an opioid crisis and gives Narcan, and it turns out that the student was not, what are the possible side effects of a student getting Narcan who was not having an opioid episode?
Narcan in and of itself has no particular side effects. Its main effect is to literally eject those attached molecules from the nervous system. So it's not like if they give it and it's not in fact an opioid overdose, it's going to really harm anyone. That's the great thing about it. And because it is so portable and easy to give, it has turned around a lot of overdoses. John, have you guys given any in the district? Yeah. So a lot of places in the country, it's just something that officers carry or first responders carry as their standard packets, just because it is relatively easy to give and the side effects are minimal. It's not like some other things where you might have genuine after effects of it. And it does work very quickly. Usually within 2 to 3 minutes, you're going to see a change. But again, you always want to have two at least within those kits because you might have to give it more than once.
Yeah,
so
it's a great idea. I love it. And actually, as you're describing the nasal spray, it occurred to me that glucagon for diabetics is also
exactly.
distributed
That's right.
that same one. I'm starting to think maybe we should have those, I think it's called Baqsimi, glucagon nasals in our schools for our diabetic children.
We do,
Okay.
as long as it's a prescription medicine, of course. So we do, I have kiddos in my schools that have nasal glucagon. So it's becoming more and more common. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep, you bet.
Vice Chair Lynn.
Yeah, thank you for explaining this. I serve on a hospital board too, and I know that hospitals are often overrun with these kinds of problems. And I can imagine the doctors and nurses at the hospital where I serve grateful to school staff for saving somebody's life and before they get to the hospital. But the question I think I was interested in too was related to what Director Zerschmied was asking, and that was, and I've been kind of trying to understand what the symptoms are of opioid overdose and what that looks like. And so I think I get it. You've explained that. But one of the questions I would ask, just in that same vein, is, how consistent are those symptoms? I mean, everybody who has an opioid overdose, is it pretty much the same reaction, or does it differ?
It's pretty
depending
consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it is almost always going to be a breathing problem because of the way that the opioid depresses the respiratory system. So yeah, it's a very identifiable thing, which is, again, that's one of the things we really want to emphasize when we do the training, is not to second guess it. If you are concerned that it might be an overdose, go ahead and get it. Again, and those things are covered under Good Samaritan law and Oregon access laws for naloxone. So yeah, I don't think there's a lose. This is pretty much a win-win situation. You don't always get that in medicine, but this is, I think, for sure.
Well, it's good to hear too that even if it's administered to somebody who doesn't have an opioid overdose, that it's not going to harm them.
Right.
That's great. Director Irvin.
I will try and be brief. So I just wanted to circle back for a second. So for the training of symptoms, will that be sort of schools, like secondary school wide, not just for the 5? There's going to be 5 people at each school, correct?
We're going to try.
So that will be sort of like universal training for that symptom identification in a way, right? And then my next question was, especially speaking to the high use and the low amount of resources that we have in the state, are we continuing to find community partners that will sort of link arms with us in these efforts, kind of for not, whether it be addiction or just drug use and alcohol use and abuse, to kind of, at least in our community, kind of bolster that support aspect of it?
Yeah, one of our outside contracts is with LifeWorks, and they are an agency that offers mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. And at this point, we do have, what do we call her? A substance use prevention specialist who is in our schools, our secondary schools. And she is taking referrals for students who it's apparent that there might be an issue with substance use, either a discipline incident or a conversation with the school counselor where it becomes apparent that, gosh, maybe this is something that that you'd like to talk to someone about and think about that substance use. So so it's a model that's always evolving, how to best help students by bringing in an expert and someone who's just really super knowledgeable about substance use, levels of substance use, and then what kind of treatment is necessary.
And then this is going to be probably for some listeners a very unpopular question, but it's similar to this. It's sort of real. And so real talk here is, are there conversations happening with students? Because we know even though prevention and not partaking in drug use is best case scenario, they are. So are there conversations happening, and I'm going to try and say this delicately, about if you're going to use, are there safe, I mean, I know that fentanyl is a bit different because you don't know if it's been cut with that, but I'm just wondering if sensitively, are there conversations with students or maybe with those partners that are sort of happening where if you're going to do this, here's how to best protect your life. Does that make sense?
It sounds like you're talking about harm reduction.
Yes.
Is that right? Which is a really valid way of looking at substance use all across our population. That we know that it's more effective to not only say it's just best not to use, but if you are going to use, let's save lives. Let's make it so that people wake up the next morning. I actually am not sure about exactly what's happening in classrooms, but I know that the information that's out there that I've been sending on to administrators, to school counselors, these lessons that are, you can check them out. One of the sites that is doing a lot of great work on brief education for youth, adolescents is Song for Charlie. It's a website that's lots of schools are using, Beaverton School District is using, and they have really accessible language that really means something, I think, to the students who hear it. But that is the approach they take, as opposed to don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, which is a really good message. Yes. And probably works for most of our students. I think there's still that piece of trying to stay safe.
Yeah. And I know that in our current health curriculum adoptions, as you know, being on that committee, that we're looking at ones that have actually added pieces to the health curriculum on fentanyl, which has been really great as well. So those will be rolling out. Thank you for answering. I know that was a hard question.
Well, I will just say thank you to you both. Trey, I appreciated your comments about, this isn't something we can ignore. I grew up in this community, and opioid addiction is something that's impacted my family. And fundamentally, this is about, I'm glad you mentioned the word, this is going to save lives potentially. And the one piece I wanted to add to the conversation is the bill that permitted school districts to adopt this policy was passed in 2019, Senate Bill 665, and it was unanimously approved in the House and Senate by Republicans and Democrats. This actually isn't a controversial approach to treating drug overdoses. This is a best practice. So thank you for helping us lead the way and be in a position to potentially save students' lives. Though, as you've mentioned, I hope we never have to use it in Ttsd.
Yeah. But anyway, we hope to get this out. We hope to get this done very soon. As I said, we have gotten donations from the manufacturer, so we will have kits, at least one kit right now for each of the secondaries, and we'll hope to get this out as quickly as possible. Districts other than ours immediately around Beaverton and Hillsborough are certainly doing the same thing. So, thanks. Yeah.
Final comments or questions? All right. Thank you all very much for presenting. All right, with that, we will move to item B in reports and discussions, 2022 financial review with presenter Director David Moore. Director Moore.
Good evening, Chair Bowman and members of the board. This evening, it's my pleasure to present our current 2022 financial review. And if I could have the next slide, please. So I want to briefly touch upon multiple resources we have at our disposal as a district related to strategic investments. And I'll start off with the general fund and then some other resources, including the student investment account, which are state funds, and the ESSER monies, which are monies dedicated from the federal government for recovery of learning loss and reentry into schools as we come out of the pandemic. And in addition, we have the high school success dollars. Again, those are additional state funds primarily at the high school level for dropout prevention, career and technical education, and college prep. And a new resource we'll have at our hands when we apply for the dollars are from the most recent legislative session related to recruitment and retention of our staff. And then finally, we'll have another round of summer learning dollars for the summer of 2022. Next slide, please. So to start off with our general fund estimate and forecast, we have a 3-year picture here, including where we believe we'll end up at the end of this year as far as a preliminary estimate. And that's important because any balance this year becomes a resource in the next year that we're developing the budget for currently. So we're expecting this particular version shows $26.8 million projecting an ending fund balance at the end of this year. And we actually, after this was published on Friday, we received some new news from the Department of Education. The Department of Education always closes out the prior year. So the year ending June 30th, 2021 in this case, closes out the state school fund about this time of year. So we always are waiting for that number to consider it as an ongoing resource or actually a reduction in resources if it happens to be a negative adjustment. In our case, the preliminary adjustment was an additional $1.6 million for the 2021 state school fund. So that becomes a revenue in the current year since we've already closed out last year. So that number for projecting ending fund balance will be more like $28.4 million. So we'll have that as a resource going forward in the next year. And keep in mind, we are going into the second year of the biennium or the second year of a 2-year budget cycle of the state. The state budget's on a 2-year basis, the school district budget's on a 1-year basis. So in the current year, we received 49% of the state school fund allocation of $9.3 billion. Next year, that'll go up to 51%. So you'll see on the top line under operating revenues, we have our state revenue going from 133 million to 138 million. So that's due to the change of 49 to 51% allocation. Of course, we're also going to be showing growth in our expenditures, making some assumptions there. And we've started this trend in the current year where that we haven't seen since the Great Recession, where our operating expenditures exceed our operating revenue. And the reason for that is twofold, in that despite all the lobbying that was done by the K-12 or pre-K-12 community in the 2021 legislative session, we were left with an inadequate bump to the state school funds. We're at the $9.3 billion level. In addition, Tigard-Tualatin, like a lot of school districts across the state, has suffered a loss of enrollment over the last couple of years. So we're down from pre-pandemic numbers by about 6%, or 750 to 800 students. So that's why we have this new trend going of an operating deficit. The good news is during the pandemic, due to being in different modes of learning, including hybrid and comprehensive distance learning, we have still received the same amount of money, basically, other than the drop of enrollment. But there's certain expenditures that haven't risen to the level we would expect otherwise, or budget otherwise. For instance, we were spending less on transportation for a period. We were spending less on substitute teachers for a period, to name a couple examples. So we were able to build up that fund balance at the beginning of this year, end of the prior year. And so those dollars are paying dividends for us right now in this current 2-year period, to kind of soften the blow of that inadequate revenue level. So I wanted to point that out. The other important thing from the board standpoint is when we build the budget, we always drive towards, besides the obvious needs of the students, from the fiscal management standpoint, we drive towards meeting the minimum reserve levels required by board policy DVDB, which means that the district keeps a minimum of 12% in reserve, 12% of operating revenues. So that's the other part of the picture here, where we're comparing projecting ending fund balance with what the required reserves are. The other portion of required reserves currently are the portion that's needed to open up Art Rec and Elementary School in the fall of 2023. So that covers, that $2 million is designated to cover any additional staffing needs, utilities, custodial, supplies for the classroom, et cetera. So between the reserve policy and what we need for Art Rec, and those total just under 21 million. And with the new projecting ending fund balance number for this year and going into next year, that 19.3 gets closer to 21 million also. So the good news is this is our budget framework going into next year's budget, and this will provide kind of a mindset for us and the board that we're going to meet that target when it comes to the fund balance policy. I'm going to stop there. I've been saying a lot of words. Make sure there's no questions right now. A lot of words and few numbers. So the other thing we like to do is look out multiple years and make sure we're going to be able to manage and maintain a sustainable budget. The hard thing at this point is we're in the middle of a current biennium, and so we don't have a lot of information what 23-24 might look like. So this forecast is based on some guesstimates, and we're reflecting here a state school fund increase of about 3%, so 9.6 billion compared to the current 9.3 billion. The trouble with that small of an increase is this year we're enjoying the 51% allocation, in the first year, the next biennium, that drops down to 49% of the new allocation. So it's looking like our state school fund grant is flat. And so that's a concern related to the sustainability comment I made. And because we have projections for costs continuing to go up. So we're seeing an operating deficit of almost doubling there from 7.5 to 14.5 million. The good news is it's early, and a lot of these estimates can change to the good or to the bad, but there is opportunity to see growth based on compared to estimates. Any questions on general fund? Next slide. Director Lynn.
So it looks like as time goes on, things get worse. The support coming from the state doesn't necessarily increase to the level of the increased costs. Is that an accurate reflection of what you just said?
Yeah, it's a very, very good observation. We're in this uncertain time related to in time like we haven't seen before, because we are seeing resources from the student investment account, and those are ongoing as long as the corporate activity tax keeps coming in to the state coffers. The tricky thing with that resource is we're treating them here in Tigard-Tualatin like they're supposed to be treated. Those are additional support funds for our underserved students and their families. And other districts around the state perhaps are using those to backfill their general fund budget. But it may maintain things for those districts, but it doesn't offer those opportunities for growth for students. The other resource is the federal resource. Again, those dollars are to get students back on track, get them back into buildings and staff back into buildings. And again, promote growth for students. We're not using them for the most part to backfill anything in our general fund. So, certain leaders at the state level may think, you have all this money, you have less students statewide, why can't you make do? So that's kind of the dilemma on both sides. This is just a picture of what I just shown, showing the revenues compared to expenditures in each year, and then a trend line. The green line is what our projecting ending fund balance was showing in the chart or in the table. And then the red line is where our required reserves are. And you'll see, of course, the green line going down and the red line being fairly straight across.
Can I ask a philosophical question? I know our 12% number is a departure from what other districts have as their, whether they even have a required reserve or not. Is there an industry standard, or do you feel like 12% is the correct number for TTSD? And if so, what is the thinking behind that number?
Yeah, so the industry standard, to answer that question first, GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Association, that's the group where we submit our annual financial report for certification. Their recommended standard is 15%. And since we've come out of the Great Recession, we were down to that number that I showed on the right-hand side as an estimate in 23-24 when I first came here. And that was in 2012. So we were, things were starting to recover slowly, and we were able to build that back up. And so to answer the question, is it adequate? the 12% is a minimum. So if you can get to 15%, there's not a lot of distance between the 12 and the 15%. So that just keep in mind that 12 to 15% is a good range.
And compared to neighboring or like size districts, is 12% about what you see for districts in similar situations, or is there wide variance?
Yeah, and there's districts bigger than us that have probably in the single digits, some of them. And there's others that are our size that are right there, that the 34 million that we had at the end of last year, it's about 22%. There's another district in the metro area that's our size, that's right where they're at. And there probably was a little bit of a bubble for all districts at the end of last year due to what I described around the pandemic, the impacts of that.
Thank you.
Next slide. So I mentioned the student investment account. In the current year, we have approximately $9.2 million. And we've heard a lot of good news about the performance of the corporate activity tax. So I'm kind of going out on a limb here because we haven't heard any definite updates related to what we might expect for next year, but I'm saying approximately $10 million for next year, because that's the number that we were estimated to get 2 years ago when the Student Success Act was passed, and that was supposed to be our share. We've been climbing slowly to that level. So I think we have approximately $800,000 to build new investments with going into next year. Next slide, please. The ESSER dollars, this is a little bit more fluid in that what I'm trying to show here is what we had reserved in our plan that we submitted to the state last fall, and comparing that with what we really might need. But I think this number that we may have available in ESSER right now, I'm going to say it's going to be a wide range right now as far as my estimate, anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million. It depends on, we're refining how we're spending these dollars and updating what we've implemented compared to what we planned for and budgeted. So we should have a more refined number soon on this, but right now it's showing about $700,000.
Can I ask a question on ESSER? And I'm not sure how to phrase this correctly, but of the money we've invested so far from ESSER, is all of that being invested as if it's one-time spending, as in none of that's being used for full-time staff year-round, et cetera?
We do have some dedicated to staffing. Like, we used a big chunk of it a year ago, or actually in the current year, for the virtual academy. So those numbers, of course, expect student enrollment to go down in that program next year. So staffing is going to go down and go back into the brick and mortar classroom. So that's an example where we allocated a large chunk of it. And then there's some other positions, some specialty positions that, for instance, we added FTE to the LIFT program. So
let me ask you this way. That's helpful, but when ESSER funding dries up, will there be investments made with ESSER funds that we'll need to make part of our roll up, that we'll need to use general funds to sustain after that funding dries up? Or do we feel comfortable that when ESSER dries up, the investments made from ESSER will no longer be necessary? Or I'm not phrasing that correctly, but hopefully you understand.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Depending on what we prioritize at the time, likely there's going to be stuff we want to continue that we won't have the resource. We have potentially multiple cliffs coming, as a finance officer likes to say, with resources.
That's what I was getting at, the cliffs. Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. High school success, I mentioned the purpose of those dollars. We don't have an allocation, a definite allocation for next year, but currently it's approximately not 3.3 million in the current year. We would expect any increase would cover just the cost increase, cost of living increases and such for the program. Next slide, please. The summer learning, we received our estimates recently for that. We have about 1.6 million coming to us for the K-8 enrichment program. So the same structure and model as last summer. And then the difference of approximately 400,000 for the high school credit recovery. And the one missing piece in the summer program this year is we don't have the dollars. Last year, we received about 900,000 for childcare. So we won't have as much at our disposal for that program to partner with the summer learning piece. Next slide, please. This is just a summary, what I just shared. The one number that we don't know yet is the recruitment and retention dollars. That's a total statewide allocation of 78 million. And if you take into account that Tigard-Tualatin is usually 2% of the state budget, that's going to mean about $1.6 million for Tigard-Tualatin. And those dollars can be used for bonuses related to recruitment and retention. They can be used for training for current non-licensed staff who wish to get their foot in the door in the classroom, to name a few uses. Next slide. I think that might be it. Yep. Any final questions?
All right. Sounds like this will be an ongoing conversation with Director Moore over the next few months, but thank you for the information. So with that, I will close the report and discussion items, and I'm going to send us on a 7-minute recess, and we will come back at about 8:15. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right, if everyone could take their seats, we're going to reconvene in just a minute. All right, I will reconvene this regular meeting of the Tigard-Tualatin School Board, and we will pick up where we left off on action items part 2. Item A. Our first action item of the evening is the, Tigard-Tualatin Student Union Climate Change Committee Resolution 2122-19 with presenter Director Tracy Rose. And students, you can also come forward at the same time. Please join us.
Good evening. We are here. I've had the privilege over the last couple of weeks to help support the students as they've continued to put the pieces together to bring to you the final proposal for the climate resolution this evening. I will turn it over to them.
As it's already been said, we are the climate committee. I'm Olay, I'm a senior. We have Claire, Maddie, and Izzy, who are juniors. And we are so excited to give you guys our second reading. Just to recap what our first meeting was about, it was mostly about our 4 priorities, which were climate curriculum, waste reduction, investment in sustainable infrastructure, and tracking and reporting district sustainability.
All right, so in the time since we first presented.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can hear you, but the people watching, and there are definitely people watching, need the mic really close. So.
In the time since we first presented our resolution to the board in March, we have received feedback from the board and district staff and incorporated that into our resolution with the help of Director Irvin, Superintendent Reedy Smith, and Director Rose. With their help, we finalized the resolution, and which includes the recommendations for the makeup of the climate committee. We have submitted our resolution in hopes of board approval this evening. In addition, we have slides, a slideshow that may answer any following questions and recommend next steps that Izzy and Maddie will share with you now.
Okay, so next slide. Thank you. So next steps, as Claire said, climate resolution implementation. And so this first would be establishing and recruiting for the Climate Crisis Committee, which would have stakeholders, including student leaders, students representing Tualatin, Tigard, and Creekside Community High School, as well as district administrators and staff representing elementary and middle schools. And for consideration, district utility partners like Portland General Electric, city representatives from Tigard and Tualatin, as well as business and community partners.
Okay, and for the timeline, our goal would be to plan and establish the committee in the remainder of this school year, and then roll it out at the beginning of the 2022 to 2023 school year. And we target our first meeting for September of 2022. And we would like to recommend monthly committee meetings with reports to the board after each meeting. And we'd also like to recommend a presentation of the committee's accomplishments to the board in the spring of 2023. And thank you all for your time and your consideration. And at this point, we'd like to turn it over to the board.
All right. Director Irvin, is there anything you wanted to add before we move to deliberation, questions, etc.?
No, I just want to vote on it. That was fantastic. I really appreciate those sort of next steps slides that you prepared. And I think the list of sort of committee members is excellent. I know we've kind of brainstormed some more even since we've last met, or at least I have. So I just really, you know this, am so proud of the work that you have done, and really this is fully your work. It wasn't sort of led by adults. I mean, this was fully led by you, written by you, and that proposal and that policy is top notch. So huge hats off to you guys and this work, and really kind of learning after listening to different stakeholders and district administrators, kind of some of the tweaks that needed to be made to make it feasible and to make it quantifiable in terms of what you really wanted to see change. So excellent.
All right, questions and comments?
So I've just had a thought, and none of you guys are going to like it because I don't even like it. But it occurs to me, I had thought this was going to be a student committee or a district committee, but it sounds like it's a board committee. If the board is passing a resolution saying that we're going to create this committee, that makes it a board committee, which, you're going to hate this, means it's subject to policy BCE or BCF, and we have to determine whether it's a standing committee or an advisory committee, and the students would have to run it as a public meeting. You would have to follow public meeting law if it's a board committee. And I don't know if that was the intention, so I guess we need to have a little discussion about that right now, because it literally just occurred to me during the break, and I didn't even have time.
I don't want to speak for anyone, but that was the exact process we went through for the hate speech and bias instance policy. So I would actually recommend following that process. It makes it official.
Right.
Your meetings will be open to the public, but I don't think that's a bad thing. But I want to hear, would that be a problem for you all, or do you think that's manageable, or what's your response? Are you familiar what it means to be a public meeting?
Can you refresh us?
Yeah, so basically a public meeting means that you have to post it on the district website, which, by the way, Director Rose and district staff will help you with. It means anyone can attend and listen in. And that's what you have to take minutes for the meeting, basically, and submit them to the board for us to approve at our meetings. But I don't think it's really, were there specific concerns you had with it?
Well, it's, so when I haven't even dug into it all the way, but the policies, we have to specify whether it's an advisory or a standing, and I'm assuming this would be a standing committee, or yeah? Okay, so that's one of the things we have to determine, and then it's just a matter of, are you guys okay with it being a public meeting, which means, yeah, the press can come, any member of the public can come, you have to notice it, and you have to take minutes. So as long as you guys are cool with that, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that was all out there, because I realized we needed to dot.
It basically just makes it super official. It's like,
yeah,
very
it makes
official,
it very official. Yeah,
which is good then.
it does mean, obviously the board can authorize you to get the members of the committee, but it does mean that you'll want to review our policy BCE just to make sure that you're following all the rules, which I'm sure you will, but I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Yeah, we did also, I know when we were starting to look at the formation of the committee, we did look into reading the policy of the BCE Standing Committee, and that was definitely something that we took into consideration when thinking about the formation.
Excellent.
I should have known you guys would be right on it. You've been on top of everything else, but I wouldn't have worried. Thank you very much.
And just to clarify, if it's a standing committee, would we still be able to create those, I forget what the word is for them, but the guidelines for the recruiting of members that we had discussed?
Good question. I think so. I think we can delegate that authority to, that's what basically the last committee did, was like Maureen as board chair delegated the authority, and then Abdi and I picked we developed our own process essentially. So I think that's fine. Other questions? Yeah, Vice Chair Lynn.
I just wanted to congratulate the students for taking this leadership. We are in the midst of a climate crisis, and if students don't take leadership, we may not have a planet. I thank you for that. I feel like this is exactly the kind of leadership we need to see from young people today in order to save our planet. So thank you.
Director James.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much for the leadership that you are all here representing your, the student union, and it's really admirable that you took it upon yourselves to find all this information. It's hard for some adults to do it, so really commend you to be able to do it in the right way, in a thoughtful process. And if you need any help, let me know. I can certainly try and help you all.
So I do, I want to follow up on the item from last time. The second to last bullet point under be it further resolved. We, the district, will identify key areas of measurement, energy, transportation, waste, and water, and establish goals and practices for monitoring and reporting. I was just wondering if maybe Director Rose, you can direct us to which staff members were having this conversation internally about what that might look like. Maybe we don't have it all figured out yet, but what the initial conversations were like for those items.
And I will also defer to Director Bernard if he would like to add to this conversation. But we met with the students to ask them what are some of the things that we know we can look at? What are some of the goals that we can set where we know that there are tangible things to monitor, like energy bills, waste bills, recycling, some of the things that we know that we can see easily at our Creekside High School, but maybe not so much in our other buildings.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, Director Bernard.
Okay. Ditto, like that. Also, I think we also could engage, like the students have said, also engage some of our community partners too. I think there's an opportunity to engage, our utilities, some of our cities, as well as looking for ideas on how to measure and stuff. And so I think it's, once we get people that are more experienced in that area, that do some of the measurements of those types of things, then I think we can come up with some good ideas.
That's awesome. I appreciate the process that we went through to arrive at that. And then the final comment I'll make before I ask for closing thoughts from other folks is what I think I've been thinking about what we presented, by the way, at the National School Boards Association conference about the work you're doing. It was like the first 3 bodies of work that already happened. And then we're like, oh, by the way, we're in the middle of this one right now. And folks were really impressed. And I think I've been thinking about, what is unique, what is different about, the students in TTSD or how we do it. And a lot of districts hear from students who want the district to do something or take action, or they're angry. But what you all have done is basically said, we want to take responsibility with you in making changes. And that's a very unique approach that I think makes you all really special student advocates, and is setting us up for really tremendous success with this. So I'm grateful for you and your leadership, and I'm excited about what the next few months and years will look like for this work. With that, any closing comments or questions from you all? Okay, Director Irvin, any closing comments or questions from you? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board of Directors adopt the climate change resolution number 2122-19 as presented, and direct the students to move forward in standing up an oversight committee.
I second them.
Motion has been made by Director Irvin and seconded by Vice Chair Lynn. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
May I request a picture, please?
Yes, we may do that. And so I'm assuming the points of contact will be Director Rose for admin and Director Irvin for board, and we'll go from there. Okay. Awesome. All right, our next action item is nomination to the Tigard-Tualatin School District Budget Committee with presenter Director David Moore.
Recently, we completed our second round of solicitation and applications for the district budget committee. We have one remaining vacancy, and we received 3 applicants, and all met the requirements of living in the district, not being an officer or an employee of the district, and all were qualified voters in the district. So received the 3 applicants. We interviewed all 3 of them, myself, Chair Bowman, and Director Zerschmied, and I'll say who we're recommending for appointment, and then ask the 2 directors to share information about the process and the candidate. Jessica Peltz is being recommended for a 3-year term ending June 2024 to the district's budget committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chair Bowman and Director Zerschmied for any comments.
Yeah, I will just say I thought all 3 candidates were strong. And in fact, one of the conversations we had was hoping that the other 2 folks can be engaged in other district committee work based on their professional expertise. Jessica, I think, is a really brings a really unique skill set to the table as a planner who works in Washington County, who has extensive experience. If you look working in Newburgh, and I think her skill set will be a great addition to the budget committee. Director Zerschmied?
Yeah, I would just add, I was impressed. Several of our applicants were people who were fairly brand new to the district, and they really wanted to get involved. And it's been a long tradition in this district that our community comes in and helps us out. I mean, we talked about it with our great volunteers earlier this evening, and I think this is another example of ways in which our community volunteers in our district. And it always fills my cup to see the community, even the brand new members of our community, want to come in and help us. So I think our budget committee will be stronger.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, go ahead. Vice Chair Lynn.
I move to appoint Jessica Peltz to the budget committee for a 3-year term.
Motion's been made by Vice Chair Lynn.
Second.
Seconded by Director Jaimes. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right. And so Director Moore, I assume you already notified her of her selection, but.
Yeah, and I think we'll need to get Director Rose her contact information so she can be invited to the community advisory process.
Perfect. Great idea. Okay, then we'll move to our next action item, 2022 mechanical upgrades project. Director Moore.
Yes, the mechanical upgrades project. Back in February, the board authorized an alternative procurement process to include qualifications in addition to price through a request for proposal process. So we received 3 proposals for the mechanical upgrade work at Fowler, Hazelbrook, and Tualatin High School for this summer, and convened a committee to evaluate the proposals, including representation from our bond oversight committee. And the board is being asked to consider approval of the contract to Apollo Mechanical for an amount not to exceed $1,087,492 for these upgrades at these 3 locations.
Any questions or comments?
Just to say, I'm glad to see that it's somebody who's done work for us before, so we know their track record. If none of my fellow board members have any questions, I move to approve the award of contract to Apollo Mechanical for the 2022 mechanical upgrades project in the bid amount of $1,087,492.
I second.
Motion was made by Director Zerschmied and seconded by Director Irvin. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right, next item is resolution 2122-18, property tax exemption for low-income senior housing. Director Moore.
Yes, thank you. Every 2 or 3 years, we get these types of requests for where nonprofit groups are asking for property tax exemption. In this case, for low-income housing for seniors. And this is one I haven't seen before, in that it's the entity is leasing property from the city. So we're already not collecting any property taxes. So you can set that issue aside and consider that 2 entities in Washington County, the county itself, and the city of Tigard have already approved this exemption. They just need another entity, whether it's us or the fire district or other smaller ones, to get them over the 51% threshold. And if we don't approve it, they're going to move on to the next entity. And if it gets over 51%, all entities are affected by that property tax exemption. So this was a late add to the agenda, and the company that's leasing the property, or the entity that's leasing the property, has a closing date that butts up against the next board meeting. So they begged and pleaded and were desperate to get this out of the agenda. So finally, I let Dr. Ricky Smith help make the decision on that, and we added it. But I think it's for a good cause, and there's not any financial impact on the school district.
Questions or comments? Vice Chair Lane?
Could you explain the 51% threshold?
Yeah, so that would be considering all of the assessed value in the area that this covers within Washington County. Each entity's assessed value is accumulated until you get to the 51% threshold. So probably right now it's for sure it's under that 51% level. I don't know exactly to what amount, but adding Tigard-Tualatin's exemption action here would, the cumulative of the 3 entities would be 51% of the assessed value.
I will just say that I don't know if folks have been following the Woodspring Apartments issue in Tigard, or if you're familiar with that, but Tigard may be slated to lose affordable housing for seniors. So I think this is a smart thing to be supporting.
Especially given that it's directly behind the senior center. When I read this item, I was so excited to see that there will be low-income housing for seniors right next to the senior center. Just makes so much sense to me. And since it's not going to cost us any money, that's a pretty easy exemption to.
Someone like to make a motion?
I move to adopt resolution 2122-18 as submitted to approve the use of an exemption from district assessed property taxes on the value of the property located at 8815 Southwest O'Mara Street in the city of Tigard, administered by Washington County, that qualifies for the nonprofit cooperation low-income housing program authorized under ORS 307.540 through 307.548.
Second.
Motion was made by Director Zerschmied and seconded by Director Jaimes. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you, Director Moore. That will bring us to our last item of the evening, appointing 2 board members to participate in the selection of the 22-23 school board student representatives, because we will be saying goodbye to Mahathi and Henry after a year of service. Although what I will add, so the policy is in the board packet. You've all probably read it. It's just 3 short paragraphs. But historically, the way it's worked is 2 board reps, the superintendent, as well as the 2 student representatives participating in the process, which I think has worked really well. So basically what we're doing now is determining which 2 school board members would like to serve on that interview and selection process. Anyone eager to jump in and get involved?
Will the, okay. Will the interviews be virtual or can they be?
I think that's a choice. I would probably, we did virtual last year. I can't remember if it was by necessity or by choice. Okay, but I think that could be arranged. We did our budget committee or interviews by virtually.
If they're virtual, then yes, I would be interested.
So that was a yes from you and a yes from.
Yes.
Is that okay with Vice Chair Land and Director Zerschmied?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
The board moves to appoint board members Tristan Irvin and David Jaimes to participate in the selection of the school board student representatives.
I second.
Motion was made by Vice Chair Lynn and seconded by Director Zerschmied. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously. And I believe that will bring us to the end of our agenda. There's no non-agenda public comment items. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:43.